So, really interesting. When you were working on the Ohio Veterinary Licensing Board, were you dealing with li- uh, client complaints as well?
That's, yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
What are some lessons learned that you could give to all the veterinarians out there while you're working on the veterinary board for them to avoid?
Such an experience.
Well, avoid complacency. When you're in school and when you're at other practices, they will always tell you, document, document, document. And you better document. You write down what you do. And it is so much easier now, gone are our little cardboard cards where we're writing everything out and nobody can read your writing. And it was much more difficult. And then we went through the transcription phase where either you hired someone who transcribed your horribly written records, or you had transcription recordings that translate. And then that was pretty bad in the beginning, but now you can do it. It's all out there. There is zero reason why every single veterinarian and veterinary nurse cannot be doing very thorough medical records. It's faster, it's easier, and it is much more accurate. And if you don't document, you are just setting yourself up, because that's what happened. You come into the veterinary board and you said, this is what I did. These are the drugs that I gave. This is why I made the choices I made. And we said, well, we don't see it down in writing. Now we've got your word about that's what you did or what you were thinking. And we have the outcome, which perhaps might say something different. And what do you do? So that is it. And every veterinary board will tell you that. And the number of people who go home at night and have not finished their medical records is legion. And even now, sometimes I will do it because I'm making mistakes in my medical records, but I will make copious notes. And I will go in the next morning, having had a good night's sleep, and I will write out the entire record, but I still have notes. And so that's the workaround I do. If I've worked a 14-hour day and I'm trying to catch up on my records, that's a disaster waiting to happen because I'm so tired. So sometimes you have to do a little something, but that's it.
Well, I haven't had a chance to use it yet, but ChatGPT came out with a little device called Applaud that records everything and documents it and will put it up in any format you tell it to. So I think nowadays just go in there and record the whole gosh darn conversation in the room, your phone call, because it connects to your iPhone or your Droid, and then just copy and paste it right into the medical record, and you're done. You can read it; everything's in there. Um, in California, it's basically cover your ass medicine, is what we CYA medicine, because everyone's so scared of the medical board. I'm happy to say, 25 years, I never ever had to deal with that call from Sacramento, but I know a lot of people that did. And 9 times out of 10, it's because their records were awful. I mean, if you're giving Buprenex, you got to write down how many milligrams and either how many mLs that was or what the concentration was. And now with paperless records, you can automatically pre-program all that like verbiage in there. So you just put down like I gave zero point 0.3 mLs of zero point 0.6 mg per mil Buprenex. So you can cover yourself that way. But even document your phone calls, what you said in the room. I mean, there's no nowadays, with AI that takes such great documentation. There's no reason it shouldn't happen. I'm hoping that's going to bring down the amount of board complaints that actually go to the point where the veterinarian has to go in front of the board. Now, if they do something that's completely negligent, then have at it.
Well, that's really true. And of course, you always have the people who say, well, I don't want everything I say in the room to be recorded. And I do understand that because sometimes when we're talking, we don't talk the way we write and we misuse words. But if you're intentionally wanting to avoid what you're saying in the room to be on record, you need to rethink what you're saying in the room. But if you misuse a word just because you're talking and things are getting emotional or something like that, well, it happens. And you just say, well, I didn't mean to use that word. If I had to do it all over again, I would have said this other word. But if overall your intentions are clear, and if overall everything else is all right, the board will overlook, a word like that. But depends, I guess, on what the word is, because one of my fellow board members used a word in our board meeting and nobody would do anything about it. So I had to go up to the governor's office and say, we aren't going to put up with this.
Yeah.
And so, and he was taken off the board immediately. So we do have to be careful, but we should be careful. I mean, this is the whole thing. Are we saying that if it's not documented, we don't have to be aware of what we're saying? No. We should always be aware, and this falls into so much that's important today in veterinary medicine and what we're looking at, as you pointed out, on the admissions committee and a lot of other places. So probably
Yeah.
another discussion, but
Yeah. it- yeah, that's very important for them to hear. Very important for especially the young veterinarians to hear. And just so you know, that Plod device, you can actually bullet point. It actually summarizes your transcript. So you can look through it really quick, see what you don't really care about. If you guys talk about a kid's birthday, yeah, you can get rid of that. Don't worry about that. But my attorney always said, if you ever in doubt if you're saying the right thing, always say, you always end it with like, hey, I told the clients blank, your honor. Act like you're talking to a judge. And if a judge would look at that and be like, that's not what you're supposed to say, then chances are you don't want to do it. So that great words of advice. I really wanted to hit on that because you have a view that most of us do not have, and that was exactly what I wanted to hear. So thank you on that. So we're going to go into some fun stuff. So what got you out of veterinary practice?
that's a dangerous question. What got me out of veterinary practice is, well, first of all, somebody wanted to buy my practice. And I'd been considering selling in the future, but I was in practice for a long time and over 30 years. And I was ready to move on. I had developed some interests in behavior, which I had wanted to do when I started veterinary school and was talked out of it because I was told that I would never be able to be a behaviorist because I wasn't smart enough. That to be a behaviorist, you needed to know neurobiology and you needed to be able to understand how the brain works and all of this. And I kept saying, but I want to, it's what I want to do. So I got talked out of it. But it was always something that I really was interested in. And I started moving in that direction. I had a dog training facility associated with my veterinary hospital. And it was right on the same property. And so then I started looking at behavior certification as a dog trainer, not as a veterinarian, which I also did. And so it was something that I just loved. I loved the way that it came together with how people behave, because at the time, animal behavior was, I'm not going to say in its infancy, because it wasn't in its infancy, but when you talk about what we know now versus what we knew 20 years ago, it's wildly different. And at the time, I started out with flat-coated retrievers and Rottweilers, and everybody that was training dogs that I knew of used electronic collars. So I started out being what I would call now an aversive trainer, and I used them. I didn't like it, but I didn't know that there could be a different way. And it was just what we did, and I tried not to do it too much. But boy, was I brought up in that, in training. Then when clicker training more or less came along, especially the Karen Pryor Academy had a conference in Cleveland, and I thought, oh, what's this all about? And that started me down the path of positive reinforcement. And the more I learned about it, the less I wanted to use the methods I was using. And they just sort of started, one started decreasing, the other started increasing until there was no way I was going to be using aversive methods anymore. I didn't feel it was ethical. I didn't feel it was moral, and that there were, people who said, yeah, but it works. Well, okay, everything that works does not need to be used. And what does it works really mean? Let's parse that a little bit. And I just got into the science of it and the explanation of it. And I just kept going deeper and deeper. And I'm now kind of a behavior nerd, so to speak. People take my classes because they like the detail, and they don't take my classes because of the detail. I'm just here to train my dog. And I want to say, yeah, but look at this. And look at this research. And they're saying, I don't care about the research. What's, let's get Fluffy to sit when I ask him to sit. So that's what happened. That's kind of my training journey. And I'm also a tag teach certified level 3 teacher. And tag teach is more or less the use of positive reinforcement on people. It's used a lot with people with autism, and with kids, and with athletes. Olympic athletes are taught via tag teach a lot. And it is just a fascinating study of human behavior and coaching. And I use that continually. So I use it in my veterinary hospital. And I taught technicians, nurses, how to, for instance, intubate a snake with using tag teach, how to handle birds using tag teach, how to answer the phone, how I liked what they were saying via tag teach. It was really fun. They learned quicker, and it wasn't negative to them. So it's a whole way of life almost once you start down that path.
Well, I mean, the fact that you did all this, it's great for young veterinarians, later career veterinarians, to understand that you can use your veterinary degree and you don't have to spend all your time in the clinic. You can go do other amazing things with animals with that your degree will give you a lot of credibility. Um, I know if I was looking for a dog trainer, the fact that you have DVM next to your name probably means a little bit more than your other credentials. But once I would go look up those other credentials, I would be like, oh, this she's got it all together. She's the complete package. Um, so let's talk about two things I'm interested in. Number one, what's your opinion of fear-free clinics?
In in what way? Whether they should exist, whether it's worthwhile, or whether
Everything. I know I have my belief, the same way I have my belief about AHA accreditation. Um, fear free, I'm all for. Yes, it's easier to work on animals if they're not scared. It's easier on the clients, especially if their animal comes in and it's there. It takes the tension and the stress away of the whole visit. The one thing that annoys me is that October 31st, you're fear-free. But if you haven't paid your dues by November 1st, you're no longer fear-free certified. And the same thing with AHA. If you don't do that accreditation every 5 years and go through that, 1,000-page, checklist of stuff they want you to do, even though you're still doing everything AHA, if you don't get inspected, you're not a AHA hospital anymore.
Isn't that true of any certification? It's true, if I have a DVM and I let my license go, I've still graduated with that DVM, and I might still know everything, but I can't practice.
I don't know. I love the concept. I love the belief, because the one thing, especially earlier career vets will learn, is that clients come in, and one of the reasons why I think they react so poorly is because they're so nervous and stressed out about bringing their dog or a cat to the vet, because they know how their behavior is there. So, was your practice fear-free certified, or did you look into that at all?
Oh, yeah, I did. My staff all got their individual fear-free, and I did too. And then, well, actually, you know what? I take that back. I didn't finish it. I had one more thing. I can't remember what happened, but I didn't actually get my certification in it. As you say, I went right through the end, and then something happened and I just went over there, and then I sold the hospital soon thereafter and didn't continue to pursue it. I think it is worthwhile. I think that people, both from the client end and from the veterinary end, may have I don't know what the word is, may not understand exactly what it's going to get them, because it's not going to get them much. And when I say get them, is when they say, well, is this going to help business? In the future, hopefully, it will become well enough known, and it is becoming much more known among the pet owning population. They're starting to buy into it, so to speak. But people who did it thinking that this was going to bring more money to the hospital, that I don't think materialized at that time when it was first starting. But now people do look for it in a hospital. But do they really understand as clientele what it entails? And that's where I think it's the whole concept struggles. And the people who started it know that. I mean, this is something that is being worked on continually. How do you integrate a practice with everything you know you should be doing to help the animal and maintain a schedule and maintain a pricing, a fee schedule that pays people for the amount of time that they're taking? So your 20-minute appointment is now 40 minutes or an hour and a half because of the fear-free practices that you feel that you can't, get around. And the client is saying, I had many clients say to me, you know what? This is 45 minutes in my dog's life in a year. So he can just suck it up. And I am not coming back for another appointment because my dog's afraid right now. I don't have time. I'm here now. We're just going to do it. And no, I don't want to spend another $60 giving him a sedative. And no, I don't have another 20 minutes because I've got to go pick the kids. I mean, it just went on and on and on while we're trying to do the best for the animal. That was early on. Now, when the calls come in and we get a feel for the client and the pet, we're much more willing to send medication home before we see the pet. And even if we've never seen the pet, we have more options now, and we understand the risk, and we can bring an animal we've never seen in at a level that can help us work with them. And so that's really flowing over into where I've gone, which isn't actually fear-free but is more the spectrum of care. How do we help these animals, these people, my staff, and myself? So how do you keep a business going with the income that you need to make to keep that business going? How do you keep the animals safe and protected? And how do you keep the people willing to come in when, and this isn't just finances. I mean, people think of spectrum of care as saying, well, if they can't afford it, what else can we give them? It is so much more than that. And we are talking about taking care of emotions. We're just taking care of every aspect of that. And that's more where I am. So what is going to help this animal in this situation today? What is going to keep that person in this situation today? So they don't have to go home. So they don't have to do this, that, and the other thing. What can we do? And where can we give? Where can we not give? And how can we move forward with that? We have so many options. And we no longer have to say, if it's not the gold standard, we shouldn't be doing it. We've got so much more than that. And
Yeah, we
that's
do.
spectrum of care. That's where I am.
So are you the gabapentin trazodone cocktail before they come in?
That's one of them. Yep.
Mhm.
And
I trust me, I've used it. Sometimes it's phenomenal. Sometimes it makes things worse. It
of course, that's one of, well, but that's one of the things that we have to say is that what are we doing? What are we treating? Is trazodone, GABA the end all be all of what we should be giving them? You know, one of the things that I started using instead would be one of the diazepam or later generation forms of it instead, depending upon it just depends. That's where you're being a veterinarian comes into play, being a clinician, being able to say what might work, what might not, realizing and letting the client know this may not work because I haven't seen your animal. I don't know. I'm going based on what you're saying and what I know. And this is what we're going to try. And when they come in, we may have to give something additional. We may not have to give an injectable. We may have to do this. We may have to do that. But you set them up for the scenario that you think might occur. And then you go from there. And you have the muzzles put on in the car. You have all of this that you can do. And I have started doing exams, not even in the hospital. We would do exams sometimes in our storage garage because the dog was fine there. They entered the door and they just lost every, you know, they just became fearful just by coming in the door. So we didn't bring them in the door. I'll
Kool-Aid
do
becomes
fast on the
Cujo.
windowsill.
Kool-Aid becomes Cujo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's being flexible. It's understanding that the world isn't perfect, and sometimes it does come down to this dog needs this, and we're going to do it today. And no, it doesn't look fear-free, but we want to balance the people that came with the pet. We can't just say, and there are people out there that I do talk to a lot who say, well, if it isn't good for the animal, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to say, well, let's pull those strings apart a little bit. Define what's good for the animal, define what's good for the people, define how they come together. And this is where you get into things like out of the University of Tennessee, Align Care with the bonded family. What would you do if this was their child and not their pet? Are you what is it? Let's talk about that a little bit. And you often find there's a bias there. And we need to push past that. And sometimes what's good for the pet is actually something that isn't as fear-free as we would love it to be for that visit. But it says,
But it's better for the client.
but it's better for the client, and that client loves that pet. And so we have to have a give and take, and we have to work through it, and we have to understand that we may go home and say, I wish I hadn't done that to that dog or that parent. But then we also have to sit back and say, why did I do it? And it's because this person that was with this pet needed to go home with this pet. And at home, this dog is everything that they want. This dog acts like this at my hospital. So let's think about the future. What can we do differently? It's always going to be that give and take, always, always, always. And we have to keep striving to be better.
Okay, Linda, I have my staff and all my associates in the back of my head screaming at me. And if I don't ask this question, I know I'll get an earful. My question to you is you were the president of the Ohio State Licensing Board. How do you prescribe medication to a patient you've never seen before if you don't have a client-patient relationship?
Yes, and this goes on a state by state basis. So this
Yeah,
isn't
I know
something-
California would be no.
Right. And most states are no, but they are redefining what a client-patient relationship is. So I believe recently, and let's not hold me to this, but in Ohio, that you can have that virtually. So that if I can meet with that client online and see that pet, and I can make my best judgment as to what is going to be best for that pet and defend that, I can do it.
And also have them sign a waiver.
Yes. Yes.
So,
And that they know that this is what's happening. And I've told them what the good and the bad and the ugly could be from medications. But let's also look at evidence-based medicine. And this is so important, is that evidence, it's not necessarily just the research or what we think is true, is where does the evidence point? And if we're going to look at statistics, the statistics on giving, let's just talk about the focus of what we're talking about now, that a pet's going to come in that we need to give medication to before they get there and we've never seen them. What are the chances that something like, well, the ones you suggested, trazodone and gabapentin, are going to harm that pet? Very, very low. Zero? No, it's not zero. But is it something that should prevent me from trying to help that pet, knowing that if I can't get them in, the chances of them getting in anywhere is going to be pretty slim? I would go with the odds that trazodone and gabapentin are not going to harm that animal. But I'm going to tell them it's not a zero-sum thing, the client, the human beings attached. So this is what I think we ought to do. It's a low risk and the chances of it helping are high. So I would recommend this. I am going to have you sign something, but this is what I recommend. It's up to you.
Yeah, yeah, the California State Board scares the crap out of me. So that is something that they're trying to get the virtual thing passed. Becomes a hot topic and then it goes away, hot topic and it goes away. I know there are virtual appointments that veterinarians do in California, but they do it for, some online platform. I don't know if they do it per se. If anything's changed in the last 10 months, someone please correct me. But I know they're trying to get it through. But, my fear is always with the virtual thing is that if someone calls you and said, my dog's been vomiting and it's just not acting well, and you could say, well, it doesn't look like anything on virtual, you probably should go to the emergency clinic, and they don't, and that dog dies of bloat, you're still going to be held somewhat liable in that situation.
I would say it would be a low liability. In other words, if you've recommended they go to the emergency hospital, that's recorded, you should not be liable. You told them what to do, they didn't do it. So there, I don't see that there would be liability. But if you didn't say that and just said, oh, he'll be fine, then there's liability.
I remember one trick my mentor that I bought my practice from always used to do, because he used to work with Bonnie Lutz, who's the veterinary attorney that protects people from state boards or defends them against state boards. And he's like, this is a trick she taught me. And I was reading through his notes one time, and it was like, puppy has kennel cough, guarded prognosis. He always used to put guarded prognosis, and God bless him. He was amazing. Taught me so many tricks. Dr. John Hamill, he was amazing. I hope everyone has mentors like that. And especially I would think, Dr. Randall, you as a mentor would be amazing with your board certification, your training, your story, being on the Ohio State Veterinary Licensing Board. Man, that would be a gift as a mentor, a gift, because you come from so many different realms. I want to get back to the training really quick. Couple questions. Number one, how much do you work with service animals?
Actually, we have a lot of calls for service animal training. We do the basics. In other words, we are not actually teaching the dogs mostly to say, do diabetic alert, or we had somebody call just the last week asking about allergen alert for their.
That's the newest one. It's called anaphylaxis, and these dogs actually smell the food and will be able to tell the owner whether or not that food is safe for them to eat. It's a 4-year certification process. And I'm like, and I don't want to sound, I think that's amazing. But if it takes a golden retriever 4 years, I mean, you and I both know Goldens get bad things at 8, 9, right? So you're going to be constantly training a new puppy, it seems like, which God bless him. I would. I love Goldens. But you could, if we could train a Chihuahua that could live to 19, that'd be awesome. But that that's the newest one. We actually just talked about it at a board meeting. But that's something that we're not going to get into. So how does an organization like Atlas Dog come into play when it comes to training a service dog?
Well, I think Atlas is amazing. Let me just segue just a little bit. We had a organization, for Pause for Ability. Do you know of it?
I knew Canines for Independence. Um, I I interviewed. There's a mobility organization that's a bunch of different dog trainers from across the country that made it, but they work more on proprioception type mobility. Um, so I haven't heard of that one.
Well, I don't know if it's local just to Ohio or what, but they would come and use my training facility at the veterinary hospital. And I found it interesting because that was the first organization that I was in contact with where they train we'll call them the foster homes, but in reality, they weren't foster homes. They would train the dog for a specific client, but they were training dogs for people who could not then have the dog at their home. They couldn't take care of them, or whatever their disability was, it wasn't something where the dog would have been safe there, or a lot of different reasons. In any case, the dog, though, was specific for that person, but then they had an attached, I don't, family or person who trained the dog and took the dog to the person with the disabilities home and helped them out there. And I thought it was an interesting concept because although you had a different trainer, I think one of the places that service dogs often fall by the wayside is that it's so hard for the people who have them to keep their training level up to the point that they really need them, where they're truly a service dog. And they, in some organizations, I know, take them back and just sort of, tune up the whole behavior response thing and all of that. So Atlas, I love the fact that they train the people to train their own dogs. And I really like it. I think it's really something that is difficult in a lot of ways. But I think that it is a way that is significantly in the long term better. So if somebody gets through the program and they and their dog are a team and things are working, that to me says that that's a long-term relationship because they know how the dog learned to do what they can do. And that's, I mean, I had 2 clients over the years who were blind and had guide dogs. And they just got into dangerous situations frequently because the dog's training started deteriorating. And so I've always wanted to know more. I've always thought that there had to be other way. And I think Atlas is filling that void. And I really, really like it. And I like the certification that goes along with it. If you want to be an Atlas trainer who can go to a house or can go help a person, and it's not the online program that you can sprinkle these people, round and about. I just like it a lot. I think it's robust.
So, how does it help to ensure that people in need can get a service dog?
Well, first of all, the interesting thing to me is Atlas says right on their webpage, I believe, that they do not choose the dog, that they do not advise on where to get a dog, what dog to get, that's on the people who want the service dog. And so once you've got the service dog, and I think, well, first of all, you've already got the service dog. So that answers part of what you're suggesting, is that they're not giving you a service dog. So once you've got it, therefore, if you needed one, you already have it. So they've eliminated part of that step there. And I'm not sure, is that what you were really asking? How
No, that,
to the people
yeah.
that need it?
Well, I
Well,
mean-
they've already decided they need it and they've got one. They've acquired one.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, and they just need to train. Correct. That's the hard part. That's the hard part. I don't know the data on how many people actually start and finish that program, because it's a definite commitment on both sides.
And I often wonder how, well, and it's because from my end, I see so many people come in and we say, oh, what a cute little puppy. Yeah, he's going to be a therapy dog. And then I say, well, what does a therapy dog mean to you? Because of course, everybody's got their own definition. Well, he's going to go into hospice or he's going to go visit schools. And I said, well, okay. I mean, if that's the therapy dog you're talking about, that's fine. If he can do that, that's all well and good. But then you've got the people who say, well, my therapy dog is really going to be a dog that my son who's in a wheelchair needs to have this, that, and the other thing, and my dog's going to pick things up for him. He's going to turn the light on. You know, he's going to do all of these things. And then they get a toy poodle, or they get a pit bull, and it's just not an appropriate dog for what they want. And I don't know how to tell them that. And so we go ahead until finally the day comes when they say, I don't think this is going to work. And now they're attached to the dog. And so that's where I see that fallout from both the veterinary end, when I have to say, well, your dog's got Addison's disease, and I don't know how that's going to work. And we see that a lot now with the magic breed doodles.
Oh, the doodles.
And you know, doodles are so known now for having some severe problems, more so than any other either purebred breed or mixed, you know, blended breed. And you just put doodle on the end of the name, and it's tough. It's tough. They've got more GI issues. They've got more skin allergies. They've got, it just goes on and on. And Addison's disease. Why? Because poodles have Addison's disease a lot more genetically.
A true story for you on that one. I had a person who, they had a Labradoodle. They got a Labradoodle, black Labradoodle. They're away on town. The sister brings it in. Your dog has Addison's. The sister loved the dog so much, she went to the same breeder. Guess what her dog has? Addison's disease. It was, you know, it is to each their own. My personal favorite also, and you'll love this being a trainer, this lady brought this golden retriever in. She's like, I just spent $15,000 on this puppy. 9 weeks old. I'm like, wow, for a golden? She's like, yeah, it's already potty trained and fully trained. And I'm like, okay. She called me 2 weeks later and she's like, I got duped. I'm like, yes, you did. You, but as a veterinarian, it's very hard to have that conversation. Like especially when it comes to training and behavior, because we're so poorly prepared for it out of school. You just kind of got to be like, okay. But then finally, I told her on the phone, I was like, how many 2-year-olds do you truly believe are fully potty trained when it comes to your child? Not many, and that's what you had. So, you know, she still loved the dog. She still has the dog now, but it's like there's the idea of service dog, already trained dog. They're using it now to dupe people, and people are getting away with a lot that they just shouldn't, in my opinion. So I end all my podcasts with the same question, and I'm going to ask you because I want these young veterinarians to hear they're not the only one going through it. What was the craziest client situation you remember?
There are so many. There are so many. So let me choose one that immediately came to mind from my years on the board, which hopefully it's been long enough that it has been. In any case, it was a particular person who wanted to take the veterinarian, we'll just say to task, to put it nicely, because his dog who died in this veterinarian's care was channeling him from the other side to tell him all the terrible things that were done to him before he passed away at the veterinary hospital. And he honestly, I believe that he believed that this was true, you know, that this was really happening, and his dog was really doing this. And he got well to the board, and we had to have a whole hearing on this. And you know, and he brought in people that were saying that that this is true, you know, channeling is a real thing. And it was really hard on the veterinarian because you can't, you have to be professional. You can't come up and just sort of say, there's no such thing as channeling, but you have to say there's no such thing as channeling. So it was a very interesting case. It's one I'll always remember because of the dedication that the caregiver had to his dog and wanting to make sure things were right.
But how does something like that get in front of the board? I mean, I'm asking for all the over 100,000 veterinarians out there. How does something like that get in front of the board? I could understand that the dog passed.
So when I
Passed away
say
under
in
his
front of the
care.
board, it wasn't so much that we actually had the hearing, but we have to,
Okay,
we
investigate,
had to listen.
investigate.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I thought it got in front of the board. I was like, I
Well,
understand the
I did
investigation.
phrase it that way, but you know, if AI was listening to me, I'd be saying, well, I didn't really mean it that way. This is what I meant to say.
Yeah,
Well, Dr. Randall, yeah, no kidding. Dr. Randall, you've had a, a heck of a career. It's still going. You're finding fulfillment in so many ways. You're just like me, always pivoting to find out what else you can do to make the profession better, to make your career path better. You're always challenging yourself. And I can't thank you enough for sitting with me and talking about this. I would love to invite you on again. I'm sure I would love to just have one whole episode on board cases. I'm sure you would tell us. I would also love to hit on the academic admission piece as well.
as well.
Please, yes, I think that is so, so important. And I
Yes.
really appreciate you being so supportive and having me on. And I do, if I may, I have a new slogan for my dog training, because you mentioned that, yes, being a veterinarian and having a full service dog training facility where our main aspect is competition dogs for agility and scent work. But we have a very large pet population, and being a veterinarian is not that common to have that combo. So how about this one? Sound mind, sound body, sound good. One smart dog.
One smart dog. I love it. I love it. I want a T-shirt with that on there.
Better.
But yeah, thank you so much. It was absolutely amazing. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
You can contact me at info@onesmartdog.com. And by the way, it is the numeral one for that. There is a One Smart Dog in Connecticut, it turns out, which I didn't know. But they are ONE for that. So info@onesmartdog.com. We're also on Facebook, also under One Smart Dog, and Instagram. And you
then
can
your
contact me personally on my, do you have show notes or anything? They can contact me personally via my email, which is
Sure.
onesmartdog.lr@gmail.com.
Perfect. And then again, obviously the reason I have people like Dr. Randall on here is because I want to make sure that we hear from all over the globe. And if you have any questions for me or have any advice on what you'd like to hear, just please contact me at drg, Dr. G, at vetmedit.com. Thank you again, Dr. Randall. We will talk soon.
It was great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.